Hey Las Vegas, thanks for joining us again on Realty Check, your local Las Vegas real estate news show, where we bring you the news plus special episodes like today's bonus episode where we have Coaching Corner. We talk about different aspects of coaching, mindset, accountability, things that can help you exceed further in life, whether you're in a real estate career or any career or any part of life. You don't even have to have a career, but these are all things that can help guide you. So if you're listening to our show, please like, follow, share with your friends. We're really getting some momentum on these downloads. I'm really excited to see that people are engaging and loving the content that we're putting out. So thank you for that and keep it up. So today we have our returning guest, that is our coaching corner expert, Sharon Swanton with Affinity Coaching. Sharon, thank you for being back.
Thank you for having me back.
Yes, thank you. And it's always great to have you. I'm excited about what we're talking about today. We've been talking so much before the show. We had a pre-show before recording. So right. We always have a lot to say. So that's great. Yep. Sharon, before we get started in talking about accountability, which is going to be the subject of today's show, which all of you guys need, really listen, maybe listen, repeat, listen again. We're talking about subjects that everybody can use and implement in their life, and we probably need a lot more of out there in the world. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about real estate, because that's what we are, a real estate show. Inventory, current inventory in Las Vegas is wow. I'm watching this number. I say it all the time. I feel like a broken record. Every week I look at the number and how much lower can this go? How low can we go? This is crazy. So single family residences in Las Vegas across all price points are 1,778 homes. So yeah, a week and a half, if all those homes sold, we would have no homes to sell. But we have tons of buyers lining up outside of houses. Yeah. There's buyers everywhere. We just don't have a lot of houses to sell. 184 price reductions. That's not even a number to blink at. That means nothing, and that's across everything. The price reductions are recorded across single family residences, condos, land, everything. So. That is, our market is definitely, we need homes to sell. We need inventory. I hear a lot of people say, oh, there's houses being built all over the city. Why aren't people buying those? Because they're all sold.
That's right.
Wherever, if you see a dirt lot with a builder sign in it, those lots are all sold. Everything is sold. Buyers, and there's demand for buyers. So we are definitely in a weird spot.
Full-blown seller's market.
Seller's market has a new definition this year.
I've been in a market like this before. I mean, nothing is forever.
Yeah.
So one thing we got to keep in mind is, yes, it's very, very tight, likely to stay that way for, I think, at least until the fall. It's very hard to see much beyond that. But we're going to have this phenomenon because we have people coming here. I mean, California is one of the main places people are coming from, and they're coming here with big equities. So they have lots of cash.
And you know what's interesting to me? Yes, we are getting so many people from California, and I'm like, is California empty? Is there like nothing going on there? Like, is no one buying in California? But there are. And I've spoken with some California agents that said most of the buyers that they're getting there are from other countries. So there's a lot of people from other countries moving to United States. California is the spot. Love the beach, love the ocean. So it's not like California is turning into a ghost town. They're still selling like crazy over there too. Not
at all. I have a coaching client in Santa Barbara, and his clients are coming from San Francisco. Go figure.
Yeah. So there's a lot of activity going on there.
There is.
So let's talk accountability, Sharon.
Okay. All right. So Trish, not you, but what do you think most people think of when they think of accountability?
I would think thorn in your side, Achilles heel, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, and yes, you're in trouble. Like someone telling you you're not disciplined, you're not following the rules, and we all do it.
So it's generally, the word has a negative connotation.
Absolutely.
And yet, For people who are successful in any walk in life, if you talk to them, they will tell you that accountability is one of the keys to their success. And I practice something I call supportive accountability.
Okay.
And the reason I call it that is to take away from this aspect of it, that you've done something wrong or bad. Because I believe that we all arrive on this planet as whole and complete beings. There's nothing wrong with us. I don't believe in the original sin and all that stuff. I don't believe in that. I think we get here and we're pretty much a blank slate.
Right.
And we spend the first few years learning to walk and talk. And that all works really great. I mean, nobody tells a baby when it's trying to say mama and dada, oh, you're not saying it right. Nobody says anything like that.
Absolutely.
When you're learning to crawl or you're learning to turn over, nobody says to the baby, oh, you're not doing that right. Instead, we do this. Oh, my gosh, look at you. You're doing a great job.
That's great.
And we keep hearing those messages up until we're about 3 or 4. Somewhere in there, we start getting different messages. And they aren't all from our parents. Some of the messages that we get are, for example, I love 3-year-old boys. They're like little trucks. They just go through life. They don't know they're little. They don't know they can't do things. They just do stuff.
Right.
However, here's what happens. 3-year-old boy is watching, let's say they're out to dinner or out to lunch with mom and dad, and they're watching somebody push open a heavy glass door. Looks to them like that might be fun. They'd like to go outside, right? Right. So little 3 or 4-year-old goes over, pushes on the door, and can't open it. Now, the message that he gives himself is not, oh, the door's too strong. The message he gives himself is, I'm not strong enough. Okay? Another example, same little boy, or it could be a little girl. If you were in my family, it would have been a little girl, right? Wants cookies, and the cookie jar is on top of the refrigerator. Little Sally or Joe goes over, gets a chair, pushes it up against the counter, climbs up on the counter, gets up on the refrigerator, and aha, success. They get the cookie jar. About that time, mom comes in and goes nuts. What are you doing up there? Don't you know you could get hurt? If you want a cookie, ask me.
Yeah.
Now, the kid doesn't think, oh, mom's overreacting. Oh, no. Child says, oh, gee, I guess I'm not supposed to do things on my own. Okay.
That's very interesting.
Yes. And so those are the messages that go into our subconscious mind between the ages of 4 and 7. Our worldview is formed. So psychologists tell us that that's the age where our worldview is formed. Our worldview is made up of things we observe and experiences that we have. However, we interpret them in terms of our being at 4 to 7, not as we would interpret them if we were an adult. So we're a child, and we interpret them in our way. And what happens then is those decisions are mostly decisions that we make prior to the age of 7 are in our unconscious mind, and somewhere around the age of 8 we forget. Psychologists call it adolescent amnesia, even though you're not really an adolescent at 8, but that's what they call it. So we forget about those decisions. However, they're still there, and they're still operating, and they're still telling us things like, you're not strong enough, you're not smart enough. What are you doing all that all by yourself? Don't you know you need help?
Right.
All those messages continue to operate. So here we are in our real estate career or any other career, doesn't matter what it is you're trying to do. These are the messages show up. It's the little voice in the back of your head that says, who do you think you are?
You know what I think is interesting on that, Sharon, is millennials, and I'm not picking on you, millennials. I'm not picking on you at all, but their generation had a lot of helicopter parents.
A lot.
I had a lot of these parents that I don't know if we, because I'm a parent of a millennial too.
Right.
If we were, maybe our parenting was so non-existent. Our parents were, it was different. Our parents were a lot different. You go do whatever you want to do and check in later, but their generation, we had phones. We were always contacting our kids. We always knew where they were at every second. They were GPS, they were whatever. We hovered over them and never let them really do anything. And millennials, when I look at a 25-year-old right now, or, sometimes even a 30-year-old, they're so much younger in mind than I was at that age. I mean, I was a full adult and they're still children, but it's our fault.
Well, I remember meeting about 35-year-old millennial. And I remember thinking, gee, this is the youngest 35-year-old I've ever met.
Yes.
Because I had the same experience. I actually do a training on the different generations. So millennials were raised by Gen Xers. Gen Xers are the latchkey kids. Gen Xers learn to do for themselves. My son is a Gen Xer. When I figured that out, it really helped the communication between us, because the way I was communicating with him, he really couldn't hear me. and when I realized what was going on, it changed it. So Gen Xers with the latchkey kids, they did everything on their own.
Everything.
Everything.
I remember going into we were visiting, we'd go camping or whatever in like other towns. I just remember wandering around in like the wilderness on my own at 5, or 6.
I have a coaching client who says, I left the house early in the morning, didn't come back at night. Nobody knew where I was.
Yeah, exactly. Because we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any way. I mean, I'd have to be home before my parents went to bed, or in some cases when I was a teenager, before they woke up in the morning for work. They just wanted to know I was still alive, right?
Exactly.
But we didn't have that.
But I think the fact that that's the way Gen Xers grew up is part of what caused them then raising their millennial children to be overly concerned. Because if you think about it, some of the things you did actually were a little risky.
Yes.
And could have gotten you hurt or killed.
Absolutely.
Okay, and probably weren't in the best judgment, because there was nobody around to help you make a better decision, right?
Right, and we look back at that. We remember what we did.
Exactly right.
And so we try to fix it with our kids.
Exactly, exactly. So we have this overreaction, if you will.
Right.
And each of the generations, we have these kinds of effects. And so, yeah, the millennials have grown up in a little bit of a protective bubble. And so they have a different view. It's very interesting to work with them and talk with them. Okay, so getting back to accountability, all right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, because if you look at millennials, their experience of accountability is really that their parents were accountable. Their parents were accountable for the outcomes that they got, not so much that they were. And accountability can kind of surprise them. But also, because accountability has this negative connotation, here's the truth. Accountability done correctly is support. It's a support for you getting what you want. And the reason I call it supportive accountability is because that's how it really works. Okay, so we were talking earlier about something you told me when I was here time before last that you wanted to accomplish by the end of January, and I asked you, did you do it? And you said yes.
Yes.
Right? And I said, too bad, because we could have used that. But it's really okay.
There's a lot of things I didn't do I should have. So.
Well, we can talk about those, because anytime you make a commitment, and tell me if this is true for what you went through, anytime you make a commitment to do anything, there are going to be barriers and obstacles. And one of the problems we have is that nobody told us that. We didn't tell us about barriers and obstacles and the fact that we were going to have them and that we had to overcome them.
Right.
We learned that, and some of us learned how to overcome them, and some of us didn't, or didn't do it so well.
So let me tell you a little secret about why I did what I said I would do, is because I knew you were going to ask me.
Exactly.
Which is why coaching works, right?
That's right.
If you know you have to answer to somebody, it's
exactly
more painful to not do it.
Right. You don't want to say, no, I didn't get it done, right?
And then get, I don't know, scolded, or I know you wouldn't scold me, but at the same time.
Actually, I want to go through that process, because you're right. I don't scold. Remember, my job as a coach is to help you get what you want. It's not what I want.
Right.
I don't have any dog in that fight at all. It's okay. So the question would be, if you had not done it, and I want to finish up about barriers and obstacles before I forget. So what happens when you make a commitment to anything, no matter how small or how big? In fact, the bigger the commitment, the more barriers and obstacles are going to get in your way.
Absolutely.
So anytime you make a commitment to do anything, there are going to be barriers and obstacles, and we're not taught that. So when they show up, we go, wait a minute. And one of the common things that'll happen today is people will go, maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Oh, no, that's not it. That's not it at all. What you're supposed to do is figure out how to manage the barrier and obstacle. You have to go over it, under it, around it. And what we do instead is we focus on it. And when we focus on the barrier, what happens? The things we focus on expand. It gets stronger.
And bigger.
And bigger. That's exactly right. So a lot of my coaching is around helping people manage the obstacles and barriers and developing a different attitude toward them so that they understand this is just part of the process. You know, what I say to people, they plan to go on vacation. What happens as a realtor, you plan to go on vacation. What's the very first thing that shows up the week before you're supposed to go?
Everything.
Yeah.
Like everything. My busiest week is the week before vacation. Right. Everyone wants an appointment.
Right. I had a coaching client years ago who said, maybe I'm not supposed to go. I said, oh, no. That's not what this is about. God's just testing you to see if you mean it.
Yeah.
The universe is just testing you to see if you really want to go on vacation. Because if you really want to go, you're going to find a way to manage what shows up.
Are we not most productive the week that we're going on vacation?
No kidding.
Nothing gets put off because you have to finish it first.
That's exactly right. Or any other commitment, because, see, vacation is something you already paid for. So there's a high risk of loss if you don't do it. So anything that has that attached to it, you're going to have obstacles and barriers. So now back to the coaching part, all right?
Absolutely.
As a coach, the thing that I'm looking for is, what are the obstacles and barriers? What's showing up to getting in the way? I had a client when I was coaching in, funny you brought this up, Salt Lake City. I had a client who was late to the training. Every time I was there, she was late. And she was coming from Park City, so I understood she had traffic issues to deal with. So we drilled down on that. So what's getting in the way? What's happening? Well, just before I leave the house, the phone will ring, or I'll realize I haven't fed my dogs, or she had a whole lot of things, okay? So a lot of looking at what gets in the way is simply a matter of looking at the simple things that get in the way. I forgot to put it in my calendar. Okay, it's pretty hard. If you're me, you don't do anything that's not in your calendar. So if you haven't put it in your calendar, it probably isn't going to happen. So then we look at, well, why didn't you put it in your calendar? So we go a little bit deeper. We go a little bit more into, and some of the bigger ones where we're trying to accomplish something, two things are happening. For example, I was coaching a different person, and she said that the reason I'm late is because I took a phone call. I said, okay, why did you take the call? And she said, well, I thought it might be a client. I said, okay, so is this the only client you have? She was a top producer, so I knew that wasn't true, right? And she said, well, no, but I just didn't want to miss the call. And I said, but you've got a recording on your phone. You know they would leave a message. Yeah, and so then we got into it. You know, what was it? It's that little voice saying, uh-oh, you better not miss that call. You might miss out on a client. You might not get that deal, right? So, okay, so where does that come from? In her case, what we drilled down on was the fact that she had observed other people when she was little who would lose out on things because they didn't stop and take care of it at the time.
Oh,
okay,
that makes sense.
All of it makes sense. We are very reasonable people. We are not random at all. We are very. You just have to figure out what it is, and it isn't always easy because we usually forget that stuff.
Yeah,
we forget those things until somebody says, "Well, think back. When was the first time I did this yesterday with somebody?" I said, "Well, think back. When was the first time you were told? What was she dealing with?" That she wasn't enough of something. I can't remember what it was. And I said, when was the first time, think back, when was the first time you were told that? She went, oh, my mom. I said, yeah, your mom's still talking to you from your unconscious mind. She's still telling you those things. So you just have to tell her to shut up. Yeah. You just have to go on with your life. So supportive accountability is about not just, did you do what you say you were going to do? It is, well, what really got in the way? What happened? What showed up? What was right in front of you? And then let's go deeper and figure out where that obstacle really comes from so that we can get rid of it. Because then you have to talk to yourself. Your unconscious mind just goes along doing its thing, and when it shows up for you, and some people have to learn to hear it because our unconscious mind has been talking to us all the time. Not everybody hears that little voice. So you have to learn to listen for it. And then when you hear it, you have to go, oh, what are you telling me? And I don't care how successful you are. I don't care how many things you've done. I don't care how old you are. That little voice is still there. When I was filming last week for this YouTube training I was taking, there it was again. It was, well, what if you don't remember what you want to say? Well, what if you stumble? Well, what? I'm going, all right.
I had someone tell me that. How many negative comments do you tell yourself during a day? And then, you know, it's, do you really want to hang out with that person all day long? If that was a physical person that was sitting in the car next to you, would you really want to hang out with them?
Right.
What are you doing? So,
Well, that's perfect. That's great. But then the question is, how do you get them out of the car?
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the hard part.
How do you get them off?
Yeah. How do you make them go away? Because they're in there, and the unconscious mind and the conscious mind don't talk to each other. So you can't just think it away. You actually have to have a dialogue with that other part of yourself. And, you know, the guy that I worked with in learning this stuff is a guy named Doug Yeaman, who actually lives in Park City now. And he developed some trainings called the quantum trainings. And what we did, because we knew that you can't just unlearn these things, you can't just talk yourself out of them, right? So what we did is we helped people change their behavior. Because if you change your behavior, your unconscious mind has no choice except to accept the new information. Oh, I told you you couldn't do that. Well, then you went and did it. So no matter, and one of the things I learned in the course of my life is that I could do anything. I just might not do it very well. If I was scared or if I had a lot of internal opposition, I might not be real graceful at it, but I could do it.
Right.
What happens is your unconscious mind notices that, because your unconscious mind wants today to be like yesterday. It wants tomorrow to be like today. It likes things to stay the same. It doesn't want change. Even good change, your unconscious mind doesn't like, right? So you've got that going on. So when you change your behavior, your unconscious mind goes, oh, wait a minute, something else is going on here. Maybe my assumptions aren't accurate. Maybe I'm not right.
Right.
So then they take in the new information, and what happens is your unconscious mind starts to change. And it begins over time to become your advocate. And so instead of having this little voice saying, who do you think you are? And you're not smart enough to do that, you have a little voice saying, well, you could probably do this. That's the first manifestation of it. You can probably do this. Oh, we don't know for sure, but you can probably do this. And then gradually over time, it'll morph into, well, you've done this stuff before. You know you can do this. You know the people you meet that are ultra confident and just know they can do anything? And you wonder how in the world did they get there? Well, that's how they got there. They've got an unconscious mind that's telling them they can do whatever they want. Their unconscious mind is prior to the age of 3, when they thought they could do everything because their parents were telling them that they could.
Right. And you see these people too. They're not scared of anything.
Oh, no.
They're not scared of trying anything new. And you're like, how do you get that kind of confidence?
Right.
Like that, exactly.
Or are you living on another planet?
Yeah, it's like you're overly like optimistic, almost like crazy and reckless, but at the same time, a history of success.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, one of the best ways, I wish I had more of this, when someone tells me I can't do something.
Then you want to do it.
That's the best motivator for me ever, because I have to prove them wrong.
Me too.
And the thing that's happened, unfortunately, with like having, success and becoming successful is you hear more of like, you can do anything. And it's not a motivator. I'm sorry, it's not a motivator.
Right.
It's someone telling me I can't actually will drive me. It's more like, I guess, vengeance, right? Just drive me to say they're wrong. I'm going to show them they're wrong. So, but that is, I'm sure that's something internal going on there.
It absolutely is. I have the same thing. With me, the best way to get me to want something is to tell me, no, I can't have it.
Exactly.
I mean, that just sets me off just like that. So what I've learned to do with myself when that little voice comes up and says, I go, oh no, that's not true. I can have it. I don't have to be this rebellious person who's fighting all these wars all the time internally, right? I can have it. It's okay. Right. So there's a whole lot of self-talk that is a part of this process. There's also, in fact, in this training I was in last week, the guy mentioned NLP and an NLP release. There is a way through NLP that you can release some of these unconscious assumptions. Unfortunately, there aren't very many people who know how to do it, and it is fairly expensive. So what I'm doing in coaching, primarily, the thing I'm doing is helping people release their unconscious assumptions that are telling them they can't do things, or why they shouldn't do something, or why something is wrong and bad, or why they're wrong and bad.
Right.
That's primarily what the coaching is about, because almost everyone I have ever worked with knows what they need to do. It's not that they don't know. They know. There are kind of 3 kinds of clients I work with. They're ones who want to change and don't exactly know how or why. They're ones who know that they want to change but don't know how to do it. And then they're the ones who want to change, know how to do it, but can't make themselves do it.
Yeah.
Okay? So the last category is the one that I can work with the easiest, because if you know where you want to go and you can articulate it, then helping you get there is a matter of getting the barriers and obstacles out of the way. It's obstacle management. It's not anything more complicated than that. My coaching client was there last week in this training, my one from LA, and he made some comment about it. We were on a break, and he made some comment to some other people about how he was a failure at certain things. And I said, I don't look at it that way at all. And he said, you don't? I said, no. I just think those things are a product of bad training. And he went, oh, well, thank you. Because that is how most of the things that get in our way are a function of decisions that we made prior to the age of 7 that were either somebody telling us something or us observing something or us trying to do something that didn't work. And then we made a decision about that stays with us to this day.
Yeah, I feel like we almost write our own stories or give ourselves our own labels that are negative. They're untrue. But because we labeled ourselves that, like me, it's bad behavior. I don't follow directions well. I'm very disciplined in myself and my own directions. I just hate it when other people tell me what to do.
Right.
So I have oh my gosh, that's my biggest problem with the, it's like I hate, that's why I'm an independent contractor. I work for myself. I don't like people telling me what to do. Biggest issue. But I gave myself that label, and I tell myself that all the time. I say I have bad behavior, but when you look at my life, I'm very structured, very well behaved, very good overall. But I say that because that's a label I gave myself, and because I gave myself that label, when someone tells me to do something, I want to not do it because I labeled myself as having bad behavior.
So here's a conversation you could have with yourself. Instead of the one that says, you told me, therefore, I'm not doing it, you can say this. Somebody's telling me to do something, but I get to choose. It's entirely up to me whether or not I do it. You need to say these things out loud, by the way. Okay. It's entirely up to me. I can choose to do what they want, or I can choose to do what I want, or I can choose to do what somebody else wants. I have complete freedom of choice about what it is I choose to do. And over time, what will happen is you'll stop having that knee-jerk reaction. You may still choose to go your own way, and you probably will. But what that would allow you to do is then take more input from more sources. Because instead of just automatically blocking them, you would go, well, I don't agree with 90% of what you said, but there is this one little thing in there that's okay that I probably could use. So instead of blocking the whole thing, you'll pick and choose the things you want that enhance where you want to go and what you want to do, and you'll just block out the rest of it.
Right, yeah. And that. Exactly. That's one thing that sometimes positive, I block out positive because I feel like I'm being ordered.
Because you're just throwing out the whole thing. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater is what you're doing. That's what we all do. We all do that because at one point in your life, that was survival. If you didn't not do what everybody was telling you to do, the you that you are internally, the kernel of you, your essence, wouldn't have survived.
Yeah.
My childhood was the same way. I would not have survived being me if I hadn't been able to stop all the things that were trying to get me to be somebody else.
Right.
And so most of us have a certain amount of that. I find that highly successful people have a theme of that running through where they at some point began to rebel. Or they either didn't have any support, so they had to create their own, or what people were calling support wasn't really supportive, and so they had to create their own. I find it a theme with very successful people.
That definitely makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So sometimes hard times create good things.
Oh, I am a firm believer in that. I think some of the best successes I've had in my life were through a struggle. You go through a struggle, and every time when I'm in something that's really terrible, really hard, that's one of the things I have to remind myself is something really great is going to happen after this.
Exactly.
Because if life is just easy and everything's easy, you're going to go nowhere. You're going to stay on this easy street, but nothing's going to happen.
That's like a stream that doesn't have a current.
Right.
You just, or being in a sailboat with no wind. You have to have things that energize you.
Yeah.
You absolutely do. And bad things. It's what I call a good bad thing. So, and I can catalog them in my life. Oh, that was a good bad thing. Now, when I first started looking at it that way, I wasn't really good at understanding it, so I only can see it afterwards. But now, when I'm going through a hard time, and I don't know why, I go, okay, just what you do. I go, okay, this is probably another good bad thing. I just can't see it right now because right now it looks bad, so I can't see the good in it. But there usually is, and it's largely a matter of, do we learn the lesson? Am I willing to look at what happened and learn from it so that it becomes a good thing? We actually do the transformation.
Right. And that's every time something bad is going on. You know, we had talked early before the show about like team building and struggles I've been having in all aspects of that in the past. But when I look back, didn't work, but what did I learn? Every time you fell, it's like, what did you learn from that? And did you learn from it? Are you going to repeat it? And anybody that's successful, anything that happens in life, I mean, no one gets there without failures. Every failure is one step closer to a success. So it's, you know, it's celebrate those failures. It's hard at the time. And I'll spend days in my pity party, you know, just when it's all done, it's like, I need to sulk. I need to feel like a victim for like, you know, 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it goes on for a week, depends on how big the situation is, but I'll do that. Everybody does that. And I feel like it's me. It's the little kid kicking my feet, screaming, you know, throwing a temper tantrum. And then I just have to pick it up and be like, okay, this is done. I got to move on. What am I going to take away from this? And what did I learn from it? So
that's exactly right. And that's the path. That's the path.
We're all 4-year-olds, right? Just walking around.
Actually,
we're all really tall 4-year-olds.
5. I actually say we're all 5 years old on the inside. I said that at my mother's funeral services, and a lady who had been our neighbor when I was 4 came up to me. Her name, I can't remember her name. She's a little tiny woman. She wasn't 5 feet tall. She was walking with a cane. And she came up and she said, Sharon, what you said about being 5 years old on the inside, that resonated so much with me. That's how I feel. I feel the same way I did when I was 5, and I'm going, yes.
It's true. I see myself all the time, and you know, sometimes I even look at the mirror. It's like inside myself, I'm still little girl Trish. You know that's always me in my head. That's never going to change, no matter how old and grown. And we see ourselves age, but it's like at the same time, you're still that child you always were.
Right, and the value system for me. The value systems that I had at 5, I mean, that 5-year-old knew some pretty good stuff. I mean, she was right about a lot of things. And so being sure, and that's really what the struggle was as I grew up with the difficult things in my family. It was being sure that I hung on to her, that she didn't get lost, that I was able. And I spent 9 years in therapy in my 20s. So, and a lot of that was to reconnect with that part of me that knew all those truths about me. Because at 5, I really did know. And we all do. We all have value systems. And even growing up in really difficult situations, with really oppressive situations, there's a part of you that knows what's right and what's wrong.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, right? And so if you're religious, you would say, you know, that's God. That's your connection to God that's telling you that. I don't care what it's connected to. I think it's extremely valuable, and it's a source of energy and a source of wisdom that's extremely valuable.
I agree with that 100%. Sharon, we could talk for hours, and we're going to talk again. So our next show, we do this every 6 weeks. So our next show is coming up. We're going to have another subject next time, and it's always interesting, always exciting, and you don't have to limit your access to Sharon just to this show. You can have access to Sharon every week. So tell people how they can do that.
The easiest way, I'm actually just setting up a website right now for Affinity Solutions, but you can get in touch with me by emailing me at sharon.swanton@yahoo.com. You can reach me at 702-289-1537. If I'm in a coaching session, I won't answer the phone.
Of course.
But leave me a message, and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can.
All right.
And I am looking forward to adding a few more clients right now to my schedule.
Yes, and people out there, she doesn't have like all the time in the world, so it's limited to an amount of clients. So if you're interested, I would certainly reach out. Make sure you could be one of those people, because you will definitely find some life-changing solutions and things that you can do to make your life better, no matter what industry you're in, or even if you're not in an industry. If you're working at home, taking care of your kids, that is an industry all in itself. No matter what people call it, it's an industry. There are ways that it can improve your life and improve the way you do things and see success. So definitely having a coach will definitely help set your game plan out. And Sharon has a lot of knowledge, as you guys can see. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, comment, share, tell your friends about our show. Keep downloading, keep listening. We'll see you again next week on Realty Check.